guys? Welcome in again. 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell.
Glenn Martin.
As always, really excited to bring in a guest of the show and a good friend of ours. We've had him on our podcast, and as we moved to YouTube, we figured since he's a vet in the game, he'd be a good guest to have on the show. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Team, keep it clean. What's going on? It's IngRaven here, joining 410 Sports Talk. Appreciate y'all having me on, and welcome to YouTube. Man.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on. So with the news dropping today, we had to get your initial reaction, your first reaction to the retirement of Mr. Marshall Yanda.
It hurt. I was a little bit shocked. I was like shocked and not shocked at the same time. I was leaning more toward, when players really first start talking about them possibly retiring, every player except Ben Roethlisberger, because he does it like every year. But when players start talking about retirement, it could be at any second or any season really. And with Marshall Yanda, he started talking about it. He's been talking about it for the past few years. But I still thought, especially with the way that this season ended, I'm like, nah, he's coming back for one more year. Just one more year. No matter how this upcoming season goes, he'll be back. So when I heard about it last night, I was like, oof, because it started going around last night, and then when it was confirmed this morning, I'm like, oh man, well I guess it's real. So I know there were some people like, oh yeah, well the Ravens we're getting $7 million cap space, so we'll have that a little more wiggle room with salary cap. But at the same time, I would rather them not have that salary cap space and still have Yanda for another year.
Much better return on investment, right?
Yeah, because you know what you're getting. It's definitely worth the $7 million. It's a guy that has been at the top of his game, at the top of the game, not just his game, but at the top of the game for a long time. He is the definition of consistency. But now Ravens have a possible question mark there. I know we still have Ben Powers. James Hurst is suspended for the first 4 games, but Powers is right now the next man up. But I think they'll bring in a vet to handle Yanda's duties, or at least to compete with Ben Powers. So,
I think that was kind of your prediction. Is who's the guy you wanted us to
Garrett Bowles.
Oh, that's right,
Garrett Bowles. So I went to the University of Utah. Now that we're talking about Marshall Yanda, and so Glenn thinks I have a little bias towards the players in the NFL.
A little. Oh my!
I think that we should draft Zach Moss, the running back out of Utah. I think he's the second best back in the draft, just my opinion. But Garrett Bowles is an alum. He plays tackle for the Broncos. I think he led the league in holding penalties last year.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
But
good sign.
So this is the thing about Bowles is that he is the least athletic left tackle, most likely in the NFL right now. But he's very physically imposing. Very tough guy. I think we could move him inside. He'd be a veteran presence, not out there with these freak of nature type athletes. The guys inside, of course, still are not quite the same. His speed wouldn't be as much of a handicap on the inside, and he could really get into being that mauler type player that he is. So we've done business with the Broncos before. It'd be nice to do some business with the Broncos again. I know that they're looking at Trent Williams, so they might be looking to offload Garrett Bowles. I like it. I'm just connecting the dots here and hoping for some good things to happen.
Yeah. Well, we'll see about that. But for the free agency, before we get to free agency, of course, just extended the deadline for tagging. So we had to get your opinion on Judon, of course. Do we tag him and keep him, tag him and trade him, or do they let him test the free agency and hope he doesn't walk, I guess?
If he goes to free agency, he's gone. With Judon, it's tricky because I'm like on the fence. If they keep him, cool. If they let him go, cool. But if you do keep him, like I have scenarios for both situations. If you keep him, he can't be the only guy. It cannot be Judon out there by himself, pretty much like he was last year. And it's no disrespect to Jihad Ward or Bowser or even Ferguson, who started coming to his own later on in the season. He started getting more and more comfortable. But it can't just be Judon and those guys. It has to be, and Jihad Ward's not even re-signed yet. I know they were talking to him about re-signing, so we'll see what happens with that. But it can't just be Matt Judon and that's it. Because Matt Judon, he was okay. He did get 9.5 sacks, and you can't take that away from him. But it's not like he's this dominant pass rusher that can take over a game at any given second. So if they do keep Judon, you got to get him help. You got to get him help. And I think it should come via free agency. Draft is cool too, but I think it should happen via free agency. Hopefully Calais Campbell, he gets released. We'll see. Yannick Ngakoue will be nice, but he's probably going to cost too much. And I say it should happen in free agency, and this is regardless if Ravens keep Matt Judon or not. If they keep him, he needs help in free agency. If they don't keep him, they need help in free agency. And I say that because in free agency, it's more of a sure thing than via the draft. And you're in win now mode. You're in win Super Bowl now mode. Not even just win now mode. Ravens are in win Super Bowl now mode, especially based off of how last season went. So you can sign a guy to a 1-2 year deal, guys that's ring chasing, because like you have a team, you got a core in place, you got a core group of guys in place that can make some stuff happen. And if you can just bring a few more pieces in that are ready right here, right now, not guys that need to develop, but guys that are ready right here, right now, then they can help get you over the hump. So pass rush, I think that should be handled via free agency.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. In fact, that's something that Glenn and I have talked about is we'd like to see if, it would be while we're in this win now mode, it would be an awesome scenario to have Judon as your number 2 pass rusher. And, if we focus in on a guy, you didn't bring up Clowney. I'm guessing you probably assume he's going to be too rich, to be too expensive. But I do think that Eric DeCosta seems to have a laser focus when it comes to his offseason and saying, I'm going to put all my chips in on at least one guy, give it a crack, and see what happens. I feel like he did that with Earl. He gave, Earl got a lot of money up front. He seemed to be pretty focused on that. And I could see something similar with Clowney. And, man, that would be awesome to see that duo together. I mean, goodness gracious. And I like, and you brought up Calais Campbell as well. That would be awesome. So definitely pass rushing sounds like you wanted to be addressed in free agency. What are some other positions that you think we should address in free agency before we move into the draft?
Wide receiver. I know he's been talking to his current team, the Jets, about re-signing with them. But my dream scenario at wide receiver will be if we can get Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is not going to be the most sought-after guy. He's going to be sought after because he's a young guy. He got a good upside. He got good speed, good hands, consistent hands. But I would love if we could add that element to the Ravens offense, a guy who is a downfield threat, a guy who does command respect, and then Hollywood will be on the other side. We still have Snead for the slot, still have Boykin, he's somebody, and a lot of this is on Lamar too, to get the wide receivers involved more. But Boykin, he has to be involved more in the second year. There was a lot of opportunities that were missed by Lamar Jackson, and he really has to improve on his field vision. Because he makes very good decisions. He's very careful with the ball, but sometimes he can miss guys. Sometimes he can miss them throwing the ball to him, but sometimes he just won't even see him. And that happened a lot of times when Miles Boykin was on the field. Miles Boykin would run a nice route, be open, but Lamar just wouldn't even be looking at him. He wouldn't even look his way. So I think if they could bring in a Robbie Anderson, just bring in another guy with that element of that speed. And Miles Boykin has a speed. So it could be that the guy's already on the team now. But if you bring in just another element of speed, involve another element of speed in free agency, Robbie Anderson would be my guy, man.
So, Robbie, what are your thoughts on a guy that we've kicked around, Emmanuel Sanders? A vet, guy that can certainly run routes. Had some injury issues lately. But what are your thoughts on bringing in Emmanuel Sanders?
Solid guy. Could definitely be our number one. Now with him, for him to come in, Lamar is going to have to improve in throwing outside the numbers. We know he can make those throws, but he has to make those throws a lot more consistently. And a guy like Emmanuel Sanders can open up our passing game because he's not just going to be running go routes. He's not just going to be, go deep and go get it. He's going to run that short and intermediate stuff too, because he's a good route runner with some really good hands, and he can block too. So Emmanuel Sanders, I wouldn't mind him if we were able to get an Emmanuel Sanders, another guy who in free agency at wide receiver is not so pretty this year. So a lot of these guys may end up getting a little overpaid or whatnot. But yeah, Emmanuel Sanders, he would be a good pickup too. And a reason I say that is because another big reason I say that, is because with Emmanuel Sanders, since the Ravens are in win right now mode, and this is a problem that they've had since 2008. with their wide receivers. A lot of people, including myself, talk about the Ravens' problems with drafting and developing wide receivers because it's an obvious issue. They'll draft these guys and they won't develop them. It's like 1 in a million for a Ravens receiver to be developed. The last one that we developed was Torrey Smith, and he was a number 2 at best. Wasn't an excellent route runner. His hands, they were up and down. He could draw some pass interference calls, so that was great.
Best talent he's ever had.
Yeah, he was great at the deep ball. Him and Joe Flacco, I always say it, no other receiver ever with Joe Flacco had a better connection than the one he had with Torrey Smith.
Yeah. And
it wasn't a coincidence that him and Torrey Smith were together since Torrey Smith's rookie year. But Ravens, with their problem at wide receiver is because it's a gift and a curse for the situation that they put themselves in as a team. Because ever since 2008, every single year, they've been in win now mode. Every single year. 2008, they went to the AFC Championship, and for the next the next 4 years after 2008, playoffs, and eventually Super Bowl. 2013, the year after the Super Bowl, they were 1 game away from making the playoffs. So they lost to the Bengals in Week 17. They didn't make the playoffs. 2014, they came back. They made the playoffs. That's Steve Smith Sr. 2015, they were 2 games away from the playoffs. So they just missed it. I think that was the game where Antonio Brown, he stretched over, was it Ladarius Webb? I forgot who he stretched over, but that was the
2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one more too, but that was that game. Then the following year, 4th and 12. Then the following year, Lamar Jackson, that's when he took over, and then
that's all you gotta say, just Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and then this year. So they've been in win now mode. So at the receiver position, they haven't really had the patience to be like, okay, you know what? Let's wait for this guy to develop. No, we need receivers right here, right now. We need proven guys right here, right now, guys that got experience right here, right now. So with them still being in win now mode, then that's why I say an Emmanuel Sanders would be a good fit, because he gives you somebody that's literally played in every type of game. He's won every type of game, and he's lost every type of game. Because I believe he was with the Broncos in their Super Bowl, and he lost the Super Bowl last year. So he has all of that playoff experience. That's what we lacked last year, was playoff experience from the wide receivers. Really from the team, period, because they were super young, but especially at the wide receiver position. And it's like, it was weird that the receiver who was the youngest on the team, he ended up being the best wide receiver for the Ravens in the playoffs. Yeah. So, yeah, to answer your question, to make a long answer short, yes, I would be down for Emmanuel Sanders, man.
So we got wide receivers, pass rush, you want to be addressed in free agency. Now, with Yanda leaving, before we talk about the draft, do you think we need to address the offensive line before we get to the draft? Now, I'm going to throw another name out there. I know that Garrett Bowles was kind of like my cockamamie story. But Kelechi Osemele is a free agent. I think he's only 30 years old.
A lot of back issues, but yeah.
Right? Got the shoulder repaired. He knows the Ravens. He's a natural guard, right? So it wouldn't be any position change. Any interest?
1 year deal, yeah.
Yeah.
1 year deal, 2 year deal, the most, with the second year not guaranteed, or the second year to be an option year to where you could just decline his option if you wanted him to be a free agent after that. So let him get one. It's probably not going to be a big payday because of his injury issues. And him, if he's 30, he'd be 31 next year going into free agency. But I would be down for that because I know he left because of money. But I'm sure he went to the Jets. He went to the Raiders. He went to the Jets and was like, ooh, the grass is really not greener. And it hasn't been anything close to greener with those organizations. So hopefully he wouldn't be in Harbaugh's doghouse, but Harbaugh wouldn't be in his doghouse because the team is obviously not under new ownership, but under new GM. So things are being run a bit differently. So I would like that because that would, again, go to them being in win Super Bowl right now mode. Right. So that would be nice. I would hope that he could be who was the guy? Is it Kimawatu? I think it was. It was a guy from the Ravens who was on the Super Bowl team in 2000, and then he came back in 2012 and was on that Super Bowl team too. I think it was Kimawatu, something like that. So hopefully Kelechi Osemele could do the same thing. He was on the Super Bowl team the last time he won. Then he comes back and Ravens finished the job this year. So yeah, that would be a good one.
And we mentioned kind of some of the holes, we'd like to see him fill in free agency.
Mm-hmm.
Now going into the draft, me and him differ on our opinions of where they should attack in the first round in particular, but first couple rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see him go after an inside linebacker with their first pick. I think they lack a lot of speed there, and we saw what they were able to do with a guy like Josh Bynes off the street. So imagine what you could do with a first-round talent there. He would rather see us go interior offensive line, kind of build on our strength. Strength. To me, I want to improve our biggest weakness. So we wanted to get your opinion on where you would attack with that first overall.
But before you give your opinion, now that it's 2-on-1, let me just.
Do you feel this?
I do. Right. Let me just state my case really quickly to see if I can sway you at all, okay?
Okay.
So we're picking at 28. I feel like based on the position, and whether it's center or guard, I think that at 28 there's a solid chance that we get the best of that position coming out of the draft. I think at 28 you're pretty hard-pressed to say you have the best middle linebacker coming out of the draft. So unless you're selling me on the second or third guy that he's really worth that first-round grade and we're not reaching for an inside linebacker, then I think I would feel better going with the best center or the best guard, even if it is the first round, because I think if we have the best offensive line and Lamar, we're in every game, regardless of anything else. So anyway, just wanted to state my claim, but go ahead.
That's a good point. I would still go inside linebacker though, because with Ravens, if they take an inside linebacker first round, they check off a lot of boxes, and when we see that those linebackers play, all those boxes get checked and more. They don't make mistakes when it comes to their first round inside linebackers. Now anything's possible, but so far so good. But it is a big need that the team does have. Josh Bynes, he was nice, but he was limited nice. Had it not been for his smarts, his experience, then a lot of the plays that he made, he probably wouldn't have made them. Because he does lack that ability, he does lack that speed. Now, we do a guy that a lot of people aren't talking about is L.J. Fort. L.J. Fort, he got signed to the extension during the season. He's somebody that they picked up off the street, and when he got his time, he was very effective and very efficient. He made a lot of plays. Like the very first game that after they signed him, he made a big play on special teams. And then once he got in on defense, he was making a lot of plays. But then he got taken off the field because it would be Josh Bynes, and they would have Chuck Clark playing linebacker when they were in nickel, and they ran that a lot. So L.J. Fort, he could be a guy that's going to be there, and he's a solid linebacker and very smart too. But I think you pair a guy with him in the first round, you address inside linebacker in the first round, so you can start to sort of rebuild that defense. And rebuild the nucleus of that defense. Now, I do understand what you said about the possibly having the best guard or center in the draft. But again, like I was saying earlier, I think since they are in win right now mode, of course you want to build for the future. But since they are in win literally right now mode, win Super Bowl right now, not just, we just want to compete this year. We just want to build the best team possible, blah, blah. No, we're trying to win Super Bowl right here, right now. Then I think linebacker would be something that you would take in the first round over an interior offensive lineman, excuse me. And I think for interior offensive linemen, I think you would address that via free agency. Okay,
fair. And you mentioned the picks, and we know the comp picks just got announced earlier today.
Right.
With the Ravens receiving a third and fourth round pick, so that brings their pick total is climbing. They have 2 picks in the third, 3 in the fourth. So with Eric DeCosta leading this draft and seemingly being a more aggressive general manager than what we're used to, do you anticipate him using all that draft capital to maybe trade up and kind of get up higher in the first round? Because I don't know how all these picks make our team. Everybody we draft has to make the team because we've never cut a draft pick that year, that we drafted them. So do you think he'll be aggressive and move up in the draft or stand pat?
I think that I don't think the Ravens are going to be picking 9 people.
Right.
They could package a pick to trade for somebody, to acquire a player, or to package something and move up in the draft to get somebody that that's a real short thing for them. So I could see them doing that. I don't see them making 9 draft selections though. So, and Eric DeCosta, he seems to be one of those GMs who, if he really wants something, he's gonna try to go out and get it. Like example, Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas was getting ready to sign like a 1-year, like $8 million deal with the Chiefs. And Eric DeCosta wanted him. He said, and he made him choose the Ravens. Like going from 1 year, $8-9 million to 4 years, 55 mil,
$30 million guaranteed.
Yeah, with $32 million guaranteed. Yeah, you can't turn that down,
right.
Man. So, and he's been super aggressive. Like even last year before the trade deadline, he was talking to the Jets about Jamal Adams. So this guy, he really knows what he wants. So I could definitely see him being aggressive. And even he could be moving up a little bit. He could move down a bit because they have the option to. They have those options, and then you throw in possibly. I hope it doesn't happen, but it's a possibility. You throw in Hayden Hurst there too, and he could be used to move up in the draft. He could be used to acquire more draft picks. He could be used to maneuver around the draft. So, and then Matt Judon could as well. So we just got to wait and see.
Going to be an interesting one.
It's going to be fun.
We're excited to see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as the, next week's going to be a big time, for the free agency opening, the tampering period.
Illegal tampering.
And franchise tags. So hopefully, thanks again for coming on. Hopefully we can have you back on before the draft to kind of, to talk about how things have changed. And, we'd really appreciate that.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'm down, man.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, man.
Yep. Bye.